Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming in to the Training, Learning, and Development community. We've got another great broadcast for you today. I'm going to say this afternoon, and sometimes I say it's this morning. It's this morning where our guest is. I'd like to introduce you to Hamideh Iraj, who is coming in from Adelaide, right?
Yeah.
Adelaide in Australia, and we're honored to have her here. Hamideh, we actually did have another session, I guess, was it last week or the week before? And we just had some technical issues with some of the audio. And so we decided to rebook this one, and here we are. And we're going to be talking about Hamideh's research, and she is a data scientist. And right now you're kind of doing some research on digital marketing, learning analytics, and just kind of the overlap of all of that. And one of the things that you mentioned to me earlier when we were talking was about mindsets, design mindset, what was it, data mindset, marketing mindset, and then just kind of what is the deal with our L&D mindset. So I'm excited to have you here.
Hello, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm very excited to be here and talk about my research and the areas that I studied and the results that I came up with. And these are all the interesting things that we want to talk about today.
Yeah, and last time it really was intriguing, and because of the audio problems, I couldn't ask any questions, and so that's why I think this is going to be fun to be able to discuss again today. And folks in the chat, Monica, Paul, JR, Brian, any of you guys, if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them into chat. We also have an ask a question section at the bottom of the screen. You can click on that and add a question, and I'll push those out to Hamideh as well. And so with that said, Hamideh, I'm going to go ahead and give you the full screen here, and let's talk about some of your research.
Okay, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
Okay, I can see you, but I don't see a share yet.
Where is the share?
If you mouse over your window kind of towards the top, you should see it.
Yeah.
There you
go. What about now?
There you go, yes.
Okay. So today I want to talk about my research at the intersection of learning analytics and digital marketing. My name is Hamideh Iraj, and I'm a PhD student at C3L Research Group, University of South Australia. Before starting, I want to talk a bit about my background. I have a very diverse STEM background. I studied mathematics in high school. I have a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. Then I worked in a software industry for 4 years as a data analyst. Then I went back to the graduate school to study IT management in my master's degree. In the meanwhile, I self-educated myself in data science using MOOCs. And then I followed a PhD program in learning analytics. So today I'm talking about data and marketing approaches in L&D using a data scientist point of view. So my presentation today has two parts. In the first part, I will talk about my research results. And in the second part, we will have a general discussion about innovations in teaching and learning. First, I want to introduce the team that I worked with throughout my research. I'm the first person on the left, and I worked with Dr. Antia Faj, Dr. Huda Khan, Dr. Margaret Faulkner, and my supervisors, Professor Abelardo Pardo and Dr. Vitomir Kovanovic, all from University of South Australia. So I want to emphasize that it was a teamwork, and it wasn't about having a unicorn that knows everything. And this was the result of the teamwork that we have done. Before starting, I want to start by a simple example. Imagine that your job is to send letters to people in the old-fashioned way. So you write some letters, you put them in an envelope, you seal it, and you send it to people. The question is, how are you going to measure the success of your letters and messages? It's difficult. Why? Because in the old-fashioned way, you don't know who is opening your envelopes, right? Someone might do or might not do it. And after that, you don't know if people are responding to the action that you recommended in your letter. So again, if they do an action or if they don't, you won't realize. Third, if they do an action, you don't know why they did it. So what was in the message that encouraged them to do a certain act? So these are all the problems that are very tangible in the pre-digital world. So the same problem exists in today teaching and learning. For example, imagine that you're sending some emails to students. If you don't know who is acting on those emails, you don't have a good measure of how well you did, So as an educator, if you say, okay, I've done a pretty good job and I created this amount of content, but you don't know how people are reacting with that, you can't get a sense of your performance. So I think this is a good example to start with because some of these problems still exist today. And the question is how we can use technology to solve these problems. So it's obvious from this example that sending content is not necessarily a good way of measuring your progress or measuring your performance. And the amount of time that you spend for preparing those letters might or might not translate to better messaging and better recipients among people. So the problem that I addressed in educational feedback messages were that those messages were very textual. So they were long and boring. They had authoritative tone and they were untrackable. So what we were basically doing was that we were sending long pieces of text to students. Our attention span has changed dramatically and, we don't tolerate reading large pieces of text. And we don't like the authoritative tone in messages. So we don't like someone to tell us to do this or do that from, a higher status or something like that. And the messages were untrackable. This is what we've talked about. We don't know how people are reacting to messages and how we can improve that. This problem was very well stated by a prominent figure in marketing called John Wanamaker. He said, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And we have the same problem in teaching and learning. Educators put a lot of time and effort for giving feedback and sending messages to students, but they don't know how well they did and how they can improve their efforts. So at that time, I realized that there is an opportunity to learn from digital marketing because these are the same problems that digital marketers have. They use emails as a communication tool to send messages to people, and they are looking for a way to engage people and to measure their performance. So this is a regular commercial email that you might have received in your mailbox. As you can see, the message is crafted in a very certain way. So the message is very short, concise, and right to the point. The text is around the action that the message recommends. So if the action is join Audible now, the text is around that, why it's a good idea to join Audible now. And there is a very explicit call to action at the end of the message. So it suggests you to do a very certain activity. Join Audible now. It doesn't tell you, in the meanwhile, take a look at our website, talk to your friends, or read these reviews or whatever. So it is somehow prescribing you to do a very certain thing. And another element that you can notice is that there is a sense of urgency. So it says your exclusive invitation ends soon. So it gives you the idea that it's better to act as soon as possible. So I was thinking that we can apply these ideas to education as well. And later on, I studied about digital marketing, and I realized that they model their efforts in a marketing funnel. And the marketing funnel itself is based on the AIDA model. AIDA stands for awareness, interest, desire, and action. And as you can see, it's a classical model in marketing to describe user engagement. And the idea is very simple and intuitive. So in the very beginning, you get familiarized and aware about the existence of a product or service. So you enter the funnel, the marketing funnel, from the top. Then at some point in time, you might find some interest to learn about the product or service. For example, imagine that you want to buy a mobile phone. In the beginning, you realize that there is a new brand with new features and new facilities. And then at some point in time, you might say that, my phone is relatively old, so why not change it to a new one? In the third stage, desire, you might find some desire to compare the product with other products and services. And finally, at a certain point in time, you might feel prompted to take action. And what digital marketing does very well is that illustrates this process in a very explicit way. And what digital marketers do is that they define a workflow to get people from the top of the funnel and accompany them down to the end, to the action stage. And at each stage, they define some messaging, and there is a very explicit call to action that directs you to the next stage. So I decided to apply this idea to a learning environment, a course, to see how we can use that in education. So I've chosen two courses, and I will mention one as an example. It's Introduction to Biosciences. It was an introductory science course, a blended course. So we had face-to-face components and digital components. We had a diverse student demographics, which was a good opportunity for us to investigate the effect of student individual differences. And we had 218 students in the class, which is a pretty good size for analytics purposes. So we came up with the idea of recrafting the messages based on the new idea of sending short, right to the point, and actionable messages. So we have split those long pieces of text into smaller chunks and recrafted each piece. So we've rewritten this email so that it's around taking practice quiz. We are not talking about anything else. We are asking the students to do just one thing, just take the practice quiz. And we put a very explicit call to action at the end, take practice quiz. So it appears in a button format so that the students can click and go to the relevant page. And for doing so, we used a software platform, a Moodle platform called OnTask. What OnTask does is that it allows us to send customized messages to students based on their previous activity. For example, it says, if that a student has watched the video, do this. If a student has clicked on the previous call to action or has completed the action, do that. So it provided us with a flexible tool for sending customized messages. In the case of the quiz, we've come up with such a workflow. So we said, okay, for engagement with a quiz, we can split it into 5 stages. First, when the quiz is up on the system, we can encourage the students to see the quiz requirements. Then we can direct them to the resources. Then we can ask them to take the practice quiz, then to review the practice quiz and spend more time with that, and finally take the quiz. So in this way, we are asking them to take some baby steps and engage gradually with the quiz. And as you can see, we realize that the idea of funnel, the shape of the funnel doesn't work in this case, because in education, we want to serve all of the students throughout the course. And we cannot exclude people based on their previous behavior. So we can't say that, because you didn't click previously, you are out of the game. In marketing, it was true in some way. So the narrowing down really happens, but not in education, because in marketing, if you don't respond to messages after a while, it means you are not interested. And nobody can force you to engage more. But in education, it's a bit different. So we have some sort of responsibility to address all of the students in the course. After that, I came up with the generalized model like this one. So we can set some stages for our engagement model. We can have a message corresponding to each stage, and we can have action and reminders for each stage. And call feedback, messages, actionable feedback messages will help us in transitioning from one stage to the other. So this approach has some purposes. First, it has some operational purposes. In this way, we can have very clear messages sent to students, and we are trying to make the process as seamless and frictionless as possible. The second purpose is comprehension and communication purposes. And when we have a very explicit model, it helps us to talk about that and teach that model, criticize that model. So it really provides a lingua franca for people to talk about their assumptions and ideas. And the third one is the analytical purposes. So for each call to action, we can capture a student responses and a student's click. And we can do some predictive analytics to find some patterns. And finally, this idea can have applications in different kind of messaging. It can be in emails, text messages. It can be a next step recommendation or notification in a regular elements. So the messages can take different shapes and they can come in different forms. We are not limited to emails. So what I've done for my research was that I said, okay, we have 2 quizzes and we have a set of messages. What we can do is that for each call to action corresponding to each message, we can do a predictive analytics based on some inputs. What are the inputs? The inputs are demographics and previous engagement with call to actions. For example, for the first one, for the first message and CTA1, we can use demographics. For the second one, we can use demographics plus CTA1, and so on and so forth. So we can do some predictive analytics in a stepwise manner to find the patterns. And we came up with interesting results. So it turned out that previous engagement is the most important predictor in predicting future engagement and future clicks with call to actions. And we also realize that most of the time in the bioscience course, female students are more likely to engage with call to actions, considering all the inputs and demographics. And the next thing that I want to talk about is the mindset shift. So throughout my research, I realized that there are several opportunities to use new ideas in education. The first one is the design mindset. So what is the design mindset? It's about focusing on learning experience rather than the content. So previously, many people thought that their job is to provide and push contents to students. So the teacher might have said, okay, my job is to provide content. It's up to students to use it. It's not my job to make it easy or to design something for them. But as you can see, if we adopt such mindset, we can help students a lot, because it's not just about the content. It's about how you're shaping it and formatting it. Compare it with buying a product. When you buy a product, it's not just about the content that's in there. It's about the packaging, the way you see it in a supermarket, if it's easy to access or not. If it's on the shelf, it might be in the eye level, so it's easy for you to see that without sitting or bending. So it's not just about the content, it's about the whole learning experience. The second thing that I want to talk about is a data-driven mindset. In education, typically data is not collected for purpose. I should have put not here. So unlike data for research purposes, in education, data is collected for operations. It's about a student enrollment, registering for courses, using the courses. But what we can do is to be mindful of the whole data pipeline, from data capture to data analysis to results and insight, so that when we want to get something out of a process, we know what kind of data are we capturing, what kind of analysis are we doing on that data, what kind of results we can get, and how we can interpret those results and come up with insight. And this might not come naturally, but this is a mindset that we can adopt, and we can gain a lot out of this process. The third mindset that I want to talk about is a marketing mindset. So in my point of view, marketing mindset contains the design mindset and the data-driven mindset, and also add something to that. So the good thing about marketing is that they had a very explicit idea for engagement. So you remember we talked about marketing funnel. When I talk to you about marketing funnel, you get a very clear idea of what I mean. For example, you can ask me, what are those levels? How transition happens from one stage to the next one? What's the meaning of that narrowing down? So having a model really enables us to have a good conversation around that. And we can, design our efforts based on that engagement model. And we know how to evaluate that. We know how we can get something out of that. Another thing that's really interesting for me about the marketing mindset is that it's about it's about the idea that engagement doesn't happen overnight. So you can say that, okay, I have uploaded a video to the website, so I hope that the students will engage. But you need to have a continuous and systematic method for engaging people. And engaging people gradually. It's not something that is a result of a one-shot effort. For example, consider the case that you are watching an ad on TV. You won't say that, okay, I think that this ad is useful for me, so let's dress up and go to the shop and buy it. It's very likely that you don't do it naturally, because even if you found the ad very fascinating and relevant, it takes some time for you to consider that offer and ask yourself if you really need that product or service. If the answer is yes, is it the best option that you can get out of the market, or there are better ways of meeting your needs? So the same holds true for engagement, and it's really good that marketing people had this mindset from long ago, that in order to engage people, we should be really persistent over time, having a very systematic method for doing that, and for measuring our performance and see how we can improve our efforts. I know many of you are educators and you are really interested in, innovations and teaching and learning. And I want to recommend the book at the end of my presentation. It's called The Medici Effect. And I found this book really interesting because it talks about innovation in different ways, and how, radical innovation is different from gradual improvement, continuous improvement, and how we can use ideas from other areas and discipline to improve our practices. And if you're interested to receive more information about the intersection of learning analytics and digital marketing, stay tuned. 2 more papers are coming. And if you want to be in touch with me, you can email me at hamideh.iraj@rocketmail.com, or you can contact me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I have also put some links for getting more information about OnTask in case you want to use it, about my research group C3L at the University of South Australia. You can also access my first academic paper. And also, I've put a link for a MOOC that I've taken and really helped me in doing my research. So it's a free course by Google, available at udacity.com. Okay, thank you. We are done with the presentation, and I'm happy to have a discussion with you about the topic.
Okay, let me, I'm going to go ahead and ask you some, oops, is my microphone? Yeah, some questions, Hamideh. So why did you get into this research exactly? Like, why are you doing this?
I came up with this idea quite accidentally. Mm-hmm. So when I came here to University of South Australia, one of the topics that we were working on was feedback, and more precisely, technology-mediated feedback. And, very instinctively, when I saw those long messages, I said, okay, why don't you use call to action? Why don't you use marketing practices? Because what we were doing in its form was email communication. Regardless of what that content is, it's email communication. So I said, okay, why don't we learn from people who are doing it on a daily basis? It's very likely that they are doing it better than us because it's their job, right. Communication. So yeah, quite accidentally.
Yeah, because your background is as a data scientist, and I just don't run into many data scientists in the L&D space, and there has been definitely a renewed emphasis, or maybe not even renewed, a new emphasis on learning analytics, especially over the last couple of years, I think. And so I think it feels like you're just a little unique in the space trying to, do research in this. And are you planning on staying within learning and development? Is this something that you're going to take on for, significant portion of your career?
Yeah, I'm really interested, and if I can find opportunities, why not? But one thing I want to add is that it wasn't easy to get an admission for a program in learning analytics, because I didn't belong to neither of those disciplines. I wasn't an education person, and I wasn't a computer science person. So I had a hard time convincing potential supervisors that I'm a good fit. Because education people said you are not one of us, and computer science people said you are not one of us either. Right. So, and to add to the complexity, my bachelor's degree and my master's degree doesn't exist in Australia. So when I was looking for PhD programs, I realized that industrial engineering is a very American idea. So in Australia, there is no such a major. And the same with IT management. So there is not a program called IT management in Australia. So yeah, as you can see, it was very difficult to talk to people and say that I have some ideas and I want to work in this area. What really helped me was that I had some proposals. So those proposals were some signals that I know something about this area. I have some ideas, so I think I can contribute to this body of knowledge. But again, surprisingly, I did it twice. So I had a hard time, but I could get admission from Australian universities twice. So it was a very complicated journey.
Right.
Yeah, to get into those programs and then finishing.
That's interesting. So as far as your research is concerned, have you seen any models that you think are like functionally successful, that are along the lines of what you're researching now? You'd given examples of the Amazon CTA, to buy that Echo ad, but is there anybody that you've seen that is actually following these principles, like in L&D now, that that you think is, I guess, maybe leading edge?
Well, there are several things. In academic papers, I couldn't find any evidence that somebody is doing it. But I know that there are some corporate solutions that they obviously have this call to actions and the idea of actionable feedback. I remember I was watching a video from Twilio. Twilio has some, education solutions. And, in one of the demos, I've seen that, the speaker was talking about call to action in messages and, this kind of things. I'm not sure how it works because I didn't have access to the product itself, but I guess corporate solutions might have this, but probably this idea was not researched, in the learning analytics community.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, what I want to do is I know that we have a few marketers that are part of the community, and I sort of want to get our heads together and see if there's a more focused direction, and maybe you can help us get more solutions to some of these issues. Can you the last slide in your deck where you have all those links, can you send that to me so I can post it?
Sure.
Awesome.
Or I can copy paste it into the chat if it's easier.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that would be great. So then I can collect all of that. And I really appreciate your time coming back and doing a discussion and a broadcast with us today. I'm probably going to get this in our Slack group, which is at tldchat.us, and maybe start a conversation about this in particular. and see if we can continue the discussion. I think I'm going to add this to our current marketing playlist that we have on the website, just because I think it's an important topic, and this is a great contribution to that whole series. So I'll be posting this on the website in that group as well. So Hamideh, thank you so much for starting your morning with us and sharing your presentation. Once you come up with any more, I know you've got another couple papers coming. Let me know. If you want to talk about them here, I'd be happy to introduce them to the community.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And thanks you guys for popping into the live show. Tomorrow we have, what do we have? We have another episode in the accessibility playlist where Alan Natachu is going to be talking about fonts and colors for accessibility. And that's it. Hamideh, have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.